Alright y'all, not gonna lie, I had a pretty normal childhood, so whenever some major event happened to me, I would usually be pretty open with my parents about it. But just like any other kid, there was some things that I just never told my parents. And I'm gonna be exposing all of that in this video. Oh, by the way, my parents actually watch my videos, so I'm basically risking it all for y'all. Especially when they find out about the last story I'm gonna tell y'all in this video. But first, let's go back to my 8th grade year of middle school where this story would take place in my science class. Now, throughout that whole year in that science class, I was basically only friends with 2 people. One of them was a guy who, we'll just call him Derek, and the other one was a girl who we'll call... Actually, her name is pretty irrelevant to the story. But basically, this guy Derek was known to have a bit of a freaky side. He was the type of guy that would jokingly just start moaning out of nowhere, usually in front of the huz too. And so one day, this girl was trying to get me to help her out with an assignment, but Derek was kind of distracting me, and I kind of forgot how. I think he was like telling me something about the teacher or something. But then the girl eventually gets impatient and she's like, yo, can you help me out with this? And I go, oh, my bad, Derek was too busy jerking off. Which, listen, I was 15 years old at some point, just like the rest of y'all, okay? Saying out of pocket stuff at that age was funny. But inconveniently, that was one of those moments where the whole classroom just decided to go silent out of nowhere. And when they heard me say that, they all started laughing. And I started laughing along too. But that was until the teacher, who was across the room helping out another student, goes, wait, what did he say? And the kid she was helping out, which by the way was laughing as well, just straight up told her. Which in the moment, I was kind of mad about, but at the end of the day, like, what else was bro supposed to say? And then she goes, Xavier, meet me out in the hallway. So she meets me out in the hallway and she gives me an opportunity to come clean and goes, Xavier, what did you say? And then my inner Eminem comes out and I go, oh, all I said was that he was just lurking off. And she goes, Xavier, that's not what you said. What did you really say? And I go, oh yeah, you're right. I said he was just working off. And she was like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. So then she sends me back into the class and pulls the girl I was talking to out in the hallway to ask her what I said. And she obviously straight up just told her what I said, which I can't really blame her for. So I immediately get pulled out in the hallway again and she goes, Xavier, what did you say? And at that point, I just put away the Eminem act and I just go, I don't know what you're talking about. And then the teacher eventually gets frustrated with me and goes, jerking off. Did you say that or not? And I go, yes. And she looks at me and she's like, all right, look, I'm just gonna keep this between me and you and I won't tell your mom about this. Now you might be wondering why she said she won't tell my mom about this instead of telling my parents about this. And that's because I forgot to mention that my mom actually worked at the middle school that I was attending. So my teacher could have easily just walked down the hallway and tell my mom, yo, your son is saying freaky things in my class, and embarrass me in front of everybody. But she didn't, and to this day my mom has no idea this ever happened. But I guess she kind of knows now. Now, about a week or so goes by, and we were in a different class this time, and the teacher was asking us how our weekend was and what we were doing. And the same kid that snitched on me said, oh yeah, I was hanging up my hentai posters. And the teacher goes, huh? What is that? And he kind of just goes silent and laughs it off. But one of my other friends sitting next to me was like, Xavier, this is your chance. Snitch on him back. But I turned to bro and said, I have no enemies. Just kidding, I just didn't want to be seen as a snitch. The second season of that show came out in 2023. The year was 2019 when I was in 8th grade. But anyway, let's go ahead and fast forward to high school where this story would take place in my physics class. Now, usually how my physics class would go is that for the majority of the class, he would lecture us through some PowerPoint and have us take notes. And then he'll give us like the last 20 to 30 minutes of class to do some 10-question online assignment. And a lot of the times, a lot of people will end up stuck on one problem. So it was a very normal thing in this class to see a bunch of people lined up in front of his desk asking questions. But I just so happened to be sitting next to one of the smarter kids in the class, so he would kind of help me out through a lot of the problems. But there would end up being this one problem that I was just stuck on, and he was stuck on it as well. And even while I was at home, I still couldn't figure out the problem. So I would then email this teacher with the thought in mind that a lot of people go up to his desk and ask questions, and I didn't, which is definitely my fault. But to be fair, he was one of those teachers that would make you feel stupid for asking a question on some I thought I already explained this type beat. So I would start off the email by saying, hey Mr. Teacher, can you help me out with this problem on the assignment? And then I would end the email by saying, sorry I didn't ask you in class. You usually spend most of the class time lecturing and I didn't really get around to it. Which to this day, I don't know if me saying that was rude or not. Y'all let me know in the comment section down below. Is it rude to tell a teacher that they spend the majority of class lecturing? But he would basically send me a rude email back saying, oh, there's so many people that come up to my desk asking questions and I never see you coming up to my desk asking questions. And then he would send me a link to a page of some online online textbook that didn't help at all. By the way, I also forgot to mention that this was one of those classes in high school that I was falling asleep in a lot, so that definitely wasn't helping out my case. But then the next day comes around and class goes pretty normally, and then we eventually get to the end of the class. Everybody is already stood up, packed up, chatting to each other, waiting for the bell to ring. And I see my teacher in the corner of the class kind of just like fidgeting with his ruler, and then he makes eye contact with me and gives me that little come here finger motion. And in the most angry teacher cartoonish way possible, bro just starts scolding me. He was like, every day I see you come in here and fall asleep in my class, and you don't think I see you because you try hiding behind that kid in front of you. Which, no, that wasn't my intention. I just naturally lean forward while I'm falling asleep. And then he goes, all these kids come up to my desk and ask questions and you don't, and you think I lecture too much? I don't even lecture that much. I better not see you falling asleep in my class again or you're in serious trouble. And I was kind of just standing there like, oh, yes sir. Bro was red in the face and everything. But I had no idea what he meant by I was gonna be in trouble if I ever fell asleep in his class again. So I really started making an effort to stay up in his class. And I mean, it was genuinely difficult. And I still never ended up going up to his desk to ask any questions for the rest of the year. My tutoring friend really carried me throughout that whole class. But if you guys haven't noticed already, one thing that all these stories have in common is that they all took place in school. Except for this last story where even though I was in elementary school, this story would take place after school. So I was hanging out outside. Yes, I actually went outside back then with my two friends, the same ones from the Yandere video for those who watched that vid, and their older brother just so happened to be tagging along with us as well. Now we were all just bored sitting on a street curb not knowing what to do until I came up with what was probably one of the worst ideas I've ever had in my life. There would be these acorns that would fall from trees, and they weren't usually big acorns, they were usually pretty tiny. I'm over here trying to tell y'all the size of the acorn as if what I was about to do wasn't menacing either way. And I look at my friends and I go, guys, what if we threw these at cars as they were passing by? Wouldn't that be funny? And they were all like, yeah, that would be pretty funny. I really wish I was trolling with y'all. The combined IQ of that group was probably below 20. We was really on some Ed and Eddie type timing. And then I was like, bet, and I decided to go first. And I kid you not, I would literally pick up an acorn, and as a car would pass by, I would throw the acorn at the car. And when I did it, the car didn't stop or anything. It just kept passing by. And after I did it, we all started laughing. So then my friends do it as well, and they get away with it. The cars just pass by. But then it was the older brother's turn. He picks up the acorn, and the next car that passes by, I mean, he full on baseball pitched that acorn at the car. And the lady steps out of the car, and as soon as she stepped out, we immediately start running. And as we're booking it, she shouts at us saying, are you serious? I live in this neighborhood, you know? Because yeah, one important detail I kind of left out was that we were doing this in front of our houses. So it's not like the car is at a 50-mile-an-hour road and just speeds by as we're throwing the acorn at it. Like, no, every car was going 15 miles an hour, so they can see us out all 240 frames full on throwing acorn at their car. But we eventually run into the backyard of my friend's house. The lady wasn't chasing us or anything, and my friends opened the back door that led to their basement, and they were like, all right, let's just hide here for now. And that lady that literally got an acorn thrown at her car would actually turn out to be the least of our concerns, because at the time my friends actually had a house dog, and that boy was growling at me. Let me go ahead and give y'all some context. The breed of this dog was an English Mastiff, which is a pretty big boy. Let me give y'all some more context. I was in elementary school. If y'all think I'm short right now at 5'5", at elementary school, I don't even think I was over 4 foot. Damn. So this dog was bigger than me in every way. So the dog sprints past not only the older brother, but my two friends as well, and jumps on me. And considering that this dog was bigger than me in every way, I fall onto my back and this dog starts biting me in my chest. Now, thankfully, they were able to get the dog off me pretty quick, but I did end up with some bite marks. And when I got back up, I had felt what was probably the biggest adrenaline rush I'd ever felt in my life. That was literally the first time and the last time I've ever been attacked by a dog. And I'm not gonna exaggerate and be like, oh, my life flashed before my eyes, but it was pretty scary. So after that, I immediately went back home, but the older brother did come with me, and he was like, yo, you good, bro? Did he get you bad? And I lift up my shirt to show him the bite marks, and he was like, dang. And I was like, oh no, it's all good, man, don't worry about it. And he was like, all right, man, sorry about that. And then he went back home. And as I was walking into my house, I started thinking of excuses to explain the bite marks that I got, because obviously I wasn't gonna tell him that we were throwing acorns at people's cars and I got bit by a dog because of that. And at the time, I went through a huge skateboarding phase, so I decided to go with that. So I immediately showed my dad the marks that I got, and he was like, what happened? And I was like, oh, I fell off my board while skating and slid on the street. And he was like, all right, well, just be careful next time. And my sister kind of of comes down late and she sees the marks that I had on me as well, and she was like, "What happened?" And my dad goes, "A dog got him." Gah! When I tell you that my heart dropped all the way down to my bum when he said this. But then my sister started laughing, and then my dad started laughing, and then I kind of awkwardly started laughing as well. Turns out he was just joking around. I really thought my dad had a sixth sense and he just saw through my lie completely. And when this whole thing went down, I was wearing a certain blue and white jacket. And for the next week or so, I was not wearing that jacket at all because I was afraid the lady was gonna spot me and get me in trouble. But to this day, I don't think I remember ever seeing that lady again. Now, at the time, I went over to my friend's house quite often. And ever since that day, I would always ask my friends before going into their house, "Yo, is your dog out?" And they would always be like, "Oh yeah, let me go and throw him upstairs real quick." And sometimes when I would come over, their older brother would be there. And you know how older brothers be messing with their younger siblings a lot, and sometimes he would kind of rub that off on me. And so one time when I was over at their house, he was like, "Xavier, if you ever see the dog and you get scared, just jump on the table." And I obviously knew he was joking around, so I kind of just laughed it off, and he kind of laughed it off as well. But then one day, the dog would somehow come downstairs. And I would look at the older brother and I would be like, "Yo, you gonna get your dog?" And he was like, "Jump on the table." And I was like, "Yo, I'm not gonna jump on the table." And he just starts laughing at me while the dog is just looking at me. But it seemed like the dog was a lot more calm and collected, and so he kind of just left him there for a minute or so. And the whole time I was treating that dog like an Enderman from Minecraft. I made sure not to look in his eyes. But the dog would never end up bothering me. And to this day, I have a really tiny scar under my chest, and I mean so tiny to the point where you might need a magnifying glass to see it. But it's still there, and every time I notice it, it would always remind me of that one day. And up until now, my parents never knew about that day. So now that I've exposed myself, I would really appreciate it if you guys could like the video and subscribe to the channel. And the video you'll see on screen is a video that YouTube thinks you'll like, so you should definitely give it a watch.